Something strange is happening inside the Cleveland Browns organization right now, and if you've been paying attention closely, you can already feel the shift. Just a few months ago, Dillon Gabriel was being talked about as a quarterback with upside, somebody who still had time to develop and possibly fight his way into a real NFL opportunity. But suddenly, the energy around him feels completely different. The trade rumors that were supposed to save him are fading away. The criticism keeps getting louder, and now one name is hanging over this entire situation like a storm cloud: Shedeur Sanders. And here's the scary part for Gabriel. Nobody inside the Browns is saying anything directly. There's no dramatic announcement, no public fallout. But sometimes in the NFL, silence tells you everything. Because once teams quietly start looking toward the future, careers can unravel fast. And right now, all signs are pointing toward a brutal reality that most fans still haven't fully realized yet. Dillon Gabriel might already be running out of time in Cleveland. But that's only the beginning of this story. For a while, it honestly looked like Dillon Gabriel might get lucky. There was real buzz surrounding a possible move to Atlanta, and a lot of people believed that could have been the perfect reset for his career. New city, new coaching staff, fresh opportunity. Sometimes quarterbacks just need a different environment to survive in this league, and reports suggested Atlanta could have offered exactly that. Fans online started convincing themselves that Gabriel simply needed to escape Cleveland's crowded quarterback room to finally show what he could do. But then everything changed almost overnight. The rumors suddenly cooled off. Insider discussions shifted tone. Reports started claiming that the Falcons were no longer interested in making any move happen, and once that possibility disappeared, the entire conversation around Gabriel became way darker, because now there's no safety net anymore, no clean exit, no easy explanation for why things haven't worked out. Now he's stuck in Cleveland with the pressure building from every direction imaginable. And that's where this situation gets dangerous. In the NFL, when a struggling quarterback loses potential trade interest, teams around the league notice immediately. It sends a message, whether organizations admit it publicly or not. If another franchise doesn't believe you're worth taking a chance on, suddenly your current team starts looking at you differently too. That's why the failed Atlanta scenario matters so much more than people realize. It wasn't just a missed opportunity. It may have quietly exposed how the league currently views Gabriel behind closed doors. What makes it even worse is the timing. Cleveland isn't operating like a team patiently developing a young quarterback anymore. Their actions feel urgent. Their focus feels different. And once organizations start shifting toward urgency, developmental players are usually the first ones pushed aside. Reports questioning Gabriel's arm strength and decision-making didn't help either. Analysts started openly wondering whether he could truly handle NFL-level defenses, and once those conversations enter the mainstream, it becomes incredibly difficult to escape them. The scary part is that quarterbacks don't usually lose jobs because of one massive disaster. It's often much quieter than that. One failed trade, one shaky preseason, one coaching decision, one moment where the organization stops fully believing. And suddenly, the player finds himself fighting for a roster spot instead of competing for a future. That's exactly where Gabriel appears to be right now. But as rough as this situation already sounds, another problem was quietly growing in the background at the exact same time. And that problem had a name everybody in football suddenly couldn't stop talking about: Shedeur Sanders. The Browns can say this is an open quarterback competition all they want, but if you really watch how organizations operate, you know actions always reveal more than press conferences do. And right now, Cleveland's behavior is telling a story that should seriously worry Dillon Gabriel. Look at the way reps are being distributed. Look at the way coaches talk during interviews. Look at the energy surrounding different quarterbacks in camp. It doesn't feel balanced anymore. It feels like the Browns are already leaning toward other options while Gabriel slowly drifts into the background. One of the biggest signs is how much attention Deshaun Watson continues receiving despite everything that's happened over the last few seasons. Reports suggest the Browns still want to see if the old Watson can come back after his recovery process. That matters because veterans with massive contracts almost always get longer opportunities than younger quarterbacks trying to prove themselves. Whether fans like it or not, organizations don't easily walk away from investments that last. That automatically puts Gabriel in a brutal position. Because now he's not just fighting for development reps anymore. He's fighting against an established veteran, media pressure, organizational expectations, and a fan base desperate for answers. That's an impossible environment for most young quarterbacks to survive. Then came the criticism. Questions about his arm strength started gaining traction online. Analysts began debating whether he could truly stretch the field consistently at an NFL level. Others questioned his processing speed under pressure. Some reports even claimed the Browns weren't fully convinced by what they'd seen during practices and evaluations. Whether every rumor is accurate or not, the damage comes from the conversation itself. Once those narratives start spreading, every throw becomes magnified. A short pass suddenly looks weak. A hesitation suddenly looks concerning. A missed read suddenly becomes proof that critics were right all along. That's how quarterback situations spiral out of control fast. And here's what makes this even more uncomfortable. Nobody inside the organization is aggressively defending Gabriel publicly. Usually when teams truly believe in a young player, you hear strong support from coaches, executives, or insiders close to the team. But with Gabriel, the tone feels cautious, almost distant, like Cleveland is waiting to see whether he gives them a reason to fully commit before investing emotionally in his future. That silence says a lot, because NFL teams don't waste time once uncertainty enters the building. If coaches start doubting whether a quarterback fits their long-term vision, they immediately begin exploring alternatives. And lately, it feels like Cleveland's attention is already drifting somewhere else entirely. Toward a younger quarterback carrying massive hype. Toward a player whose name alone dominates headlines. Toward somebody many fans already believe represents the future of the franchise. And once that kind of attention enters the picture, things can get ugly very fast. Whether people want to admit it or not, Shedeur Sanders completely changed the atmosphere surrounding this quarterback situation the second his name started getting connected to Cleveland. Because Shedeur isn't just another young quarterback prospect. He's one of the biggest football storylines in the country. Everywhere his name goes, attention follows immediately. And that kind of spotlight changes organizations. Suddenly fans start dreaming bigger. Media coverage becomes non-stop. Every debate show starts discussing future possibilities. Analysts begin building hypothetical scenarios around him before anything even officially happens. That pressure spreads throughout the entire franchise, whether players admit it publicly or not. For Dillon Gabriel, that's a nightmare. Because now he's competing against more than just players on the roster. He's competing against excitement itself. And excitement is one of the most powerful forces in professional sports. Coaches love upside. Front offices love future stars. Owners love marketable names. Fans love hope. Shedeur brings all of those things naturally before he even steps onto the field. That instantly changes how people view everybody else in the quarterback room. The comparison isn't even fair anymore. One quarterback is fighting criticism and uncertainty, while another is generating headlines, hype videos, and non-stop discussions about future potential. Even if Shedeur hasn't officially won anything yet, the momentum around him already feels massive. And momentum matters in the NFL. You can even hear the shift happening in football conversations. Analysts who barely mentioned Gabriel before are suddenly talking non-stop about what the Browns could become with Shedeur involved. Fans online are debating future offensive systems, future chemistry, future possibilities. Meanwhile, Gabriel's name only comes up when discussing roster uncertainty or competition pressure. That's an extremely dangerous shift. Because once organizations emotionally buy into the future, patience for current projects disappears quickly. Teams stop focusing on development timelines and start focusing on acceleration. They want immediate flashes, immediate excitement, immediate proof that they're moving in the right direction. And if one quarterback creates more energy than another, the entire building feels it. Now, to be fair, a lot of this remains speculation. Reports continue circulating, fans continue theorizing, and media narratives continue growing louder by the week. But even if some of the hype gets exaggerated, the effect is still real. The Browns know exactly how much attention surrounds Shedeur Sanders. They know what kind of reaction he creates from fans and analysts alike. That absolutely impacts decision-making. And this is where timing becomes cruel in the NFL, because sometimes players don't fail simply because they aren't talented enough. Sometimes they get caught in the middle of organizational shifts they can't control. One player arrives with momentum while another loses it. One player fits the future timeline while another suddenly feels replaceable. That's the danger Gabriel is facing now. And unfortunately for him, the NFL has never been known for patience. Once organizations believe a brighter future might already be waiting around the corner. One of the hardest truths about the NFL is that teams love talking about development right up until they don't. Every organization claims it wants to be patient with young quarterbacks. Every coach says growth takes time. But the second pressure starts building, patience disappears faster than anyone expects. And right now, Dillon Gabriel is learning exactly how brutal that reality can become. At first, the Browns seemed willing to give him room to grow. There was curiosity surrounding what he could eventually become. Some people believed his football IQ and college production would help him overcome concerns about size and arm strength. The idea was simple: let him sit, learn the system, improve gradually, and maybe surprise people later. But the problem is that NFL timelines move differently than college football timelines. Teams don't wait years anymore unless they see immediate flashes that make them believe the investment is worth it. And lately, the flashes people expected from Gabriel haven't consistently shown up. That's why this upcoming stretch feels so dangerous for him. Training camp and preseason aren't just routine practices anymore. They're full evaluations. Every throw gets analyzed. Every hesitation gets noticed. Coaches start building depth charts mentally long before they announce anything publicly. And once a quarterback starts slipping in those internal rankings, climbing back becomes incredibly difficult. What makes it worse is how unforgiving quarterback competitions really are behind the scenes. Fans often think players get multiple opportunities to recover from mistakes, but in reality, one rough performance can completely change momentum. A bad preseason drive suddenly becomes a major talking point. One underthrown deep ball starts reinforcing every criticism analysts already had. One shaky read becomes evidence that a player can't process NFL defenses fast enough. That's how narratives take over careers. And the scary part is that the NFL rarely announces these decisions dramatically. Teams don't usually walk into a press conference and admit they've lost faith in a young quarterback. Instead, the signs appear quietly. Fewer reps with the starters, more praise directed toward other quarterbacks, reporters changing their tone during interviews, insiders hinting that roster spots aren't guaranteed anymore. That silence can be louder than any headline. For Gabriel, the pressure now feels overwhelming because he's reached the point where he doesn't just need to play well. He needs to force people to change the conversation surrounding him entirely. That's much harder than simply competing. It means proving critics wrong in real time while every mistake gets magnified online and inside the organization. And the Browns don't seem interested in slowing things down for anyone right now. They want clarity, they want stability, they want answers at quarterback. If Gabriel can't provide those answers immediately, Cleveland may decide it's smarter to move on before investing any more time. That's the brutal reality of this league. Potential keeps you alive for a while, but eventually teams stop caring about what you might become. They only care about what you are right now. And if Gabriel doesn't change that perception fast, his future in Cleveland could disappear much sooner than anybody expected. As complicated as this quarterback battle already looks, Deshaun Watson's presence makes everything even messier. Because regardless of public criticism, injuries, or outside controversy, the Browns still have massive reasons to keep giving him opportunities. And unfortunately for Dillon Gabriel, that reality creates an almost impossible situation. Reports continue suggesting Cleveland wants to see whether Watson can still return to the level he once showed in Houston. That possibility alone changes the entire dynamic of the quarterback room. Teams simply do not give up easily on players they invested this much money, time, and attention into. Even when fan frustration grows louder, organizations convince themselves there's still a chance things can turn around. That means Watson automatically enters camp with advantages other quarterbacks don't have. He gets patience. He gets opportunities. He gets the benefit of the doubt. And in the NFL, those things matter more than people realize. Now place Gabriel into that environment. He's already fighting criticism surrounding his physical tools. He's already losing momentum publicly. Then you add a veteran quarterback still trying to reclaim the starting role, and suddenly Gabriel becomes trapped in the worst possible middle ground. He's not experienced enough to command loyalty from the organization, but he's also not exciting enough right now to completely steal the spotlight. That middle ground is dangerous because teams hate uncertainty at quarterback. Organizations want clear roles. They want players who either look like long-term answers or reliable backups. When somebody exists in between those categories, front offices start questioning whether keeping them makes sense at all. And that's where Gabriel appears to be drifting right now. The Browns' behavior reflects that uncertainty too. Watson continues receiving attention as a legitimate contender. Coaches still discuss his physical abilities with optimism. Reports claim Cleveland remains curious about whether rehab and recovery could help him regain confidence and explosiveness. Every positive Watson update naturally creates less room for everyone else competing around him, including Gabriel. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Veterans almost always get longer leashes than younger developmental quarterbacks. A veteran can struggle for weeks and still receive another opportunity because coaches trust experience. Younger quarterbacks rarely receive that luxury. If they struggle early, organizations quickly start wondering whether they should pivot somewhere else entirely. That's why Gabriel's margin for error feels microscopic now. Meanwhile, younger talent continues pushing for opportunities too. Reports suggest Cleveland wants real competition throughout camp, and whenever teams use phrases like open competition, somebody usually ends up losing badly behind the scenes. Every strong throw from another quarterback adds pressure. Every positive practice report makes Gabriel's position more unstable. And all of this is happening while media attention keeps drifting toward future possibilities instead of present development. That's the real problem. Because once organizations become emotionally invested in what could be next, players stuck in the current uncertainty often get left behind quietly. They become placeholders instead of priorities. And if the Browns already view Watson as the experienced option while seeing somebody else as the future option, Gabriel risks becoming the quarterback caught awkwardly in the middle with nowhere to firmly belong. That's not a good place to survive in the NFL. The most dangerous thing happening to Dillon Gabriel right now might not even be the competition itself. It might be the fact that he's losing control of the story surrounding him. And once that happens in professional sports, things can spiral faster than most fans realize. Earlier in the process, conversations about Gabriel sounded hopeful. People talked about his leadership, his college production, and the possibility that he could eventually outplay expectations. Even critics admitted there was intrigue surrounding what he might become if everything developed correctly. The narrative centered around potential. But now the tone has completely changed. Instead of discussing upside, analysts are focusing on limitations. Instead of imagining future growth, people are questioning whether he belongs in the Browns' long-term plans at all. That shift is devastating because perception affects everything in the NFL. Coaches may deny it publicly, but outside pressure absolutely influences organizations. Media coverage shapes fan reactions. Fan reactions create organizational pressure. And once enough doubt builds around a player, every small mistake suddenly feels bigger. That's exactly where Gabriel is stuck right now. One underthrown pass becomes proof his arm isn't strong enough. One slow read becomes evidence that he can't process defenses quickly. One quiet practice suddenly creates speculation that he's falling behind in the competition. And when those narratives pile up repeatedly, they become incredibly difficult to escape. What makes this worse is the silence from inside the organization. Usually when teams strongly believe in a young quarterback, insiders leak confidence. Coaches publicly defend the player. Front offices emphasize patience. But with Gabriel, the support feels cautious at best. Nobody seems eager to declare him part of the Browns' future. Instead, most discussions surrounding him revolve around uncertainty. That's a major red flag. There's also growing speculation that Cleveland may already have an unofficial depth chart forming internally. Reports continue hinting that coaches are evaluating quarterbacks differently than they were earlier in the offseason. Nobody has confirmed anything publicly, of course, but fans and analysts are starting to notice patterns. Certain players receive more buzz, certain names dominate headlines, and Gabriel increasingly feels like the quarterback fighting uphill against momentum he can't control. That's the harsh reality of NFL competition. Sometimes the battle isn't just physical anymore, it becomes psychological too. Once a player starts feeling the narrative turn against him, every rep carries extra pressure. Every mistake feels amplified. Every practice suddenly feels like a test for survival instead of growth. And here's the scary part. Quarterbacks rarely recover easily once organizations emotionally move on. That's why Gabriel now desperately needs a defining moment, not just a decent performance, not just a few solid practices. He needs something powerful enough to completely reset the conversation surrounding him. Something that forces coaches, analysts, and fans to stop talking about his weaknesses and start paying attention to his upside again. Because if that moment never comes, the narrative currently building around him could end up becoming permanent. Everything now comes down to preseason, not next year, not long-term development, not future potential, right now. And that's what makes this situation so brutal for Dillon Gabriel, because preseason football is one of the harshest environments in professional sports. Careers can rise in a matter of days, but they can also collapse just as quickly. For quarterbacks fighting to stay relevant, every snap becomes an audition not only for their current team, but for the entire league. Coaches are evaluating mechanics, confidence, timing, leadership, decision-making, and composure all at once. One strong performance can completely shift momentum, but one ugly stretch can quietly end a career before it ever fully begins. That's the pressure sitting on Gabriel's shoulders right now. The Browns are entering the stage of the offseason where organizations stop experimenting and start identifying who they truly trust. Training camp optimism starts disappearing. Tough roster decisions start approaching. Coaches become less patient because now they need answers instead of possibilities. And unfortunately for Gabriel, he's entering this stage with more questions surrounding him than almost anyone else in that quarterback room. What makes this even tougher is how quickly momentum can swing during preseason games. Fans only see highlights and stat lines, but inside NFL buildings, every tiny detail matters. A quarterback who looks hesitant for just a few drives can suddenly fall behind fast. Coaches notice body language. Teammates notice confidence levels. Executives notice who looks comfortable under pressure and who looks overwhelmed by it. And when competition is tight, those little details decide everything. Meanwhile, the outside noise surrounding the Browns keeps growing louder. Reports continue connecting Cleveland to future quarterback possibilities. Discussions about Shedeur Sanders haven't slowed down at all. In fact, they seem to be getting stronger every week. Whether those rumors become reality or not, they still create pressure inside the organization because fans are already imagining what the future could look like. That creates a dangerous environment for someone like Gabriel. Because now he's competing against expectations he didn't create himself. Every solid practice from another quarterback adds pressure. Every headline about future options makes his current position feel less secure. Every report questioning his development makes it harder for him to regain momentum publicly. And here's the harsh truth about NFL front offices. Once they stop viewing a player as part of the future, the ending usually comes fast. Not dramatic, not emotional, just quick. A roster move, a depth chart change, a quiet announcement during preseason cuts. That's how careers disappear in this league all the time. Which is why this next stretch feels like the biggest moment of Gabriel's football life. If he comes into preseason sharper, more confident, and more explosive than expected, maybe he changes the conversation entirely. Maybe he forces Cleveland to slow down and reconsider everything. But if the same concerns keep appearing again, then the outcome may already be written. And that's what makes this so intense. Dillon Gabriel is no longer simply competing for a role. He's fighting to prove he still belongs in the Browns' plans at all. What makes this entire situation feel so cold is how quickly everything changed. Not long ago, Dillon Gabriel was still being discussed as a quarterback with upside, somebody who might eventually develop into a real option for Cleveland. There was patience, there was curiosity, there was at least some belief that time could work in his favor. Now that feeling is fading fast. The failed Atlanta trade rumors removed what many people believed was his best escape route. Questions surrounding his physical tools continue getting louder. The Browns' quarterback competition keeps growing more intense. Deshaun Watson is still receiving opportunities, younger talent continues pushing for attention, and the massive spotlight surrounding Shedeur Sanders has completely shifted the energy around the franchise. And once NFL organizations start emotionally investing in the future, players caught in uncertainty usually don't survive very long. That's the reality Gabriel is facing now. To be fair, nothing has officially happened yet. The Browns haven't publicly moved on. Coaches haven't made final decisions. A strong preseason could still change everything. We've seen quarterbacks shock people before. We've seen careers flip direction in just a few games, so it would be unfair to completely count Gabriel out at this stage. But at the same time, all the warning signs are there. The tone surrounding him feels different. The pressure feels heavier. The margin for error feels almost non-existent. And sometimes in the NFL, you can sense when a player is running out of time before the official decision ever comes. That's what makes this story so fascinating right now. We may be watching the exact moment where the Browns quietly begin turning the page toward a completely different future at quarterback. Because this league moves fast, faster than fans realize. One season you're viewed as a promising developmental player. The next season you're fighting just to stay on the roster while new names take over the spotlight. It happens every single year, and sometimes talented players get caught in situations they can't control. Now everything comes down to whether Dillon Gabriel can produce one defining moment strong enough to stop the momentum working against him. One performance, one stretch, one opportunity to force Cleveland to rethink the narrative. Because if that moment never comes, this may not just be a quarterback competition anymore. It could be the beginning of the end of Gabriel's time with the Browns before his NFL career ever truly had the chance to start. And honestly, that's what makes the next preseason games impossible to look away from.